All right, tremendous. Libertarianinstitute.org. Go do that. It's your good deed for the day. Let's resume our conversation. I presume we have more to say.
Absolutely. Page 93, you titled this section, How Big Business Made Americans Better Off. What could you possibly say that is good about big, greedy, exploitative businessmen?
Well, this one, I think these days there's a portion of the right wing that won't want to hear this because some of them have demonized big business. And I think big business is such a large category that you can't just condemn it per se. And especially since there are some businesses that can't be anything other than big because the capital intensiveness is so great. You can't have a mom and pop auto manufacturer. How would that work? There's no way you could. So the question that comes up in that book, because it's a work of history, is it involves the kinds of accusations made in the late 19th century, maybe the final quarter of the 19th century, alleging that there were monopolistic practices, quote unquote, taking place in various industries. Well, the thing is, if you have the data, you can actually make a determination about this. And if we take the definition of monopoly that's current in economics today, now, and we'll just take them at their word that this is the correct definition, even if an Austrian might not like that definition. We see monopolistic behavior basically when prices go up and output goes down. And that what we have is a case of companies like withholding output for the purpose of getting a higher revenue stream. And so, okay, well, we can just go verify that, can't we? Why don't we go look at the various industries we have data for at that time and see, was their output increasing or decreasing? And were prices going up or down? Well, in all but two of them, the output was increasing and prices were coming substantially down. So you can say, whatever, maybe you could say they had bad working conditions. You can make up some argument against them if you wanted to, but this argument doesn't work is the point. And that basically there is almost no American history teacher in a classroom today who knows that. They think that the average person suffered because, we have all these monopolies and they can just charge arbitrary prices. That's absolutely not true. That is absolutely not true. There is not one stitch of evidence to support that implicit claim, or oftentimes not so implicit. So that was the purpose of that chapter. And then to go into a little detail about individual people and the role that they played, like, Andrew Carnegie was no saint, and he favored tariffs, and he needed to be sat down and given a good talking to. But what we also know is that the price of steel rails came down by about 90% when he was dominant. So if he's running some quote unquote monopoly, well, some stinky monopoly that is, if the price, you don't monopolize something for the purpose of lowering the price 90%. That is what happened. That actually is what happened. And we could go, I give multiple other examples. So I just don't like cartoons, and the cartoon image of the businessman, not the monopoly guy. The man on the monopoly board is not wearing a monocle, contrary to popular belief. There's no monocle. But I always imagine the rich guy having a cane and a monocle and a sack of money with a dollar sign on it. And that is the way we've been kind of taught or conditioned to think about people and institutions and subjects like this. And that just makes me crazy.
So it's very common today to use the word inflation. They're usually referring to an increase in prices, not an increase in the money supply, unfortunately. But
right.
Take what you can get. So this narrative is completely contrary. This empirical evidence is completely contrary to the narrative that over time, businesses their greed continues and they just keep raising prices. So you use steel by Andrew Carnegie, the dropping price of oil by Standard Oil as a substitute for whale oil. You use bromine in the case of Dow Chemical and aluminum in the case of Alcoa. What is it that makes prices fall and gives people an increase in access to goods and services when they're at lower income levels?
Well, a lot of the explanation doesn't necessarily involve one or two heroic entrepreneurs. It can involve just the way the system works. So let's imagine that we have a constant money. Its supply neither increases nor decreases. I'm not saying that's desirable, but just for the sake of the argument, the money is invariable, we'll say. And over time, we see, either because of population growth or because of technological innovation or because of investment in capital equipment, let's say machinery to produce products, over time you see more and more products being produced. But if the money is invariable, how are we going to be able to buy all those products? The only way, so let's say we're on a desert island and the only product produced is tomatoes, and we have like 3 copper coins and there are 3 tomatoes produced. Well, okay, you could say you charge 1 coin per tomato, no problem. But if you double your supply of tomatoes, does that mean we have to double the supply of money to buy them? No, it means now 1 coin will just buy 2 tomatoes. The price just falls down to half a coin. Like that's no problem. Well, that's what happens when, as is natural for a capitalist economy, over time, you have more and more goods and services over time. But if the money is invariable, then what happens is, in order to buy those extra things, the price of them have to come down or they won't sell. The prices have to come down. Well, basically, the price will come down because now you got all these goods and service providers competing with each other, and you have this increased supply, and the solution to that is lower prices. And that's basically what's happened, is competition lowers the prices. And we've seen that. You can compare, like, not in dollar terms, but in terms of how much time did I have to work to earn the money to buy a pair of jeans. And if you look at that over the course of the 20th century, the amount of time you had to spend working to earn the money for that pair of jeans consistently comes down. Or a dozen oranges consistently comes down. Or a kilowatt of electricity. Or a 5-pound chicken. Or whatever the product is. It's less and less time. So you get innovations, you get capital equipment that produces more stuff. The increased supply puts downward pressure on prices because, supply and demand determine prices. The increased supply puts downward pressure on prices, which means everybody's real incomes increase. Now, if you have a monetary authority that offsets this process by, putting all this money into the system, then you're not going to see that effect, or the effect might be altogether swamped. And in fact, you'll see prices rising for everything. But that's not the natural occurrence. The natural occurrence, the situation that obtained during the time the United States was rising to become the great industrial power of the world, was a system of falling prices. Prices fell across the board, not as today, just in personal computers, although they didn't have personal computers then. We see it there. We see it in things like computers, but we don't really see it anywhere else. That's because it's being offset by all the money printing. That would not be the case normally. Your precious metal money would hold its value or increase in value over time because it could not be produced willy-nilly. There was a natural limitation to how much of it could be produced. And so typically that was what made it chosen as a money in the first place, was that it was hard to make a whole bunch of it. That's why we didn't choose dirt or we didn't choose leaves. We chose something that's really hard to make a lot more of. So all the other goods in the economy are increasing at a faster rate. So, the ratio of the products to labor, is improved in labor's favor. And so that labor sees, and everybody sees, their real incomes rising because of this increased abundance. And so that's the process. And that's what would be happening. And we would see it with our own 2 eyes if we hadn't been told that unless we have rising prices, we'll have depressions, and falling prices cause depressions. Falling prices do not cause depressions. That's just made up. Falling prices do not cause depressions. Depressions have as often or more often been associated with rising prices, contrary to popular belief. I go through all this in my book, Our Enemy, the Fed, and I give that away for free. OurEnemyTheFed.com. All that stuff is in there.
Hey, you all, it's fundraising time again at the Libertarian Institute. We try not to do this to you too often, but business is business after all. I got a great group of guys and a gal at the Institute, and I got to pay them. So Just go to libertarianinstitute.org/donate to pick your price and help out. We've got some great kickbacks too, books and shirts. Great ones. That's libertarianinstitute.org/donate. And thank you all very much.